What up, everybody? This is the Dr. Football Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Teehan. I'm recording remotely tonight from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. And joining me, as always, from the Hedge Better studio in Braintree, Massachusetts, the CEO of Hedge Better LLC, Justin Fein. Justin, my man, what's going on tonight, brother? How are you?
I'm good, man. Hanging out, trying to stay out of the heat. We're in the middle of quite the heat wave, and just staying cool. What's going on with you?
It's the slowest sports day of the year. That's what's going on with me. This is the worst sports week potentially of the year. I don't know. Are you into the baseball All-Star game? I kind of am a little, to be honest, but not enough to make me say that this is definitely the driest sports week of the calendar.
Yeah, no, I definitely I don't even think I would seek out the All-Star game. Like if it was on and somebody put it on, I'd enjoy it in the background, but I'm definitely not trying to rush home to watch the game tonight. You know what I mean?
It was 2 nights ago. That says it all right there.
There you go. All right, perfect.
Yeah,
so there you go. Yeah,
there you go.
I have no
I was
clue
going
what
to
it
ask
even
you
was.
if you watched it, but apparently you didn't.
Nope. Didn't even know.
Yeah, I mean, I did watch a little. I watched the first few innings this year, and I wanted to see Paul Skeens versus Aaron Judge. That was the kind of like a cool matchup. But so I did watch some of it. But I will say I also hate the fact they've gotten this extra day of rest now, because in the past baseball started back up today, and now they have that extra day. It just feels so much longer. Like it's just nothing. It's a desert of sports this week.
Yeah, I think it's either 1 or 2 days in the entire calendar year. It might be the only day in the calendar year that doesn't have one of the 4 major sporting events.
That's exactly right. That is 100% right. It's yesterday and today.
Okay,
is the only 2 days of the calendar that doesn't have anything. And it's funny though, because this is the worst sports week of the year. It's the absolute dog days of summer, and then once training camps open up next week, it's like for NFL, I mean, we're really right back into prime sporting time, really. And the NFL will just be up and away. There'll be preseason games before we know it, and a ton of storylines in training camp across the league, not just in Foxborough. And it's it will ratchet up very quickly from here.
Yeah, no, it will. And I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm itching for some football. I don't know. Have you been watching that receiver documentary on Netflix?
I have not at all. Should I be?
It's pretty good, honestly. It's been getting me through the dry days. It's got a good group of guys. So I don't know if you saw the quarterback one that they did last year. That had Mahomes and Kirk Cousins and those guys. They did that. It's the same people. Exactly. Same people. They did it this year with receivers. It's Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and who was it? I think there's one, Justin Jefferson. So good group of guys.
And what about Hard Knocks? That started too. Is Hard Knocks with the Giants this year? Is that right? Is that what I heard?
I think it's the Giants. I've been seeing clips of it, but I don't know. For some reason, that doesn't interest me as much. I don't know.
Well, we'll segue that into our opening take because it's good that they're doing Hard Knocks. If they are doing it for the Giants this year, it's good that they're doing it, because there's no way that Bill Belichick will allow them to do that next year when he is, in fact, the head coach of the Giants.
Yeah, no, so you think he's going to the Giants?
Oh yeah. Let's get into it, because that's actually the first thing we're going to talk about, which is the Tom Pelissero report today about Bill Belichick's future. And this is the kickoff. This is the opening take we used to set the table for the rest of the podcast, and that's what we're going to look at today is Belichick's coaching future. Justin, I was beginning to get lulled into believing the fact that Bill Belichick was comfortable in his role as grand old man of the sport of football. He had signed on for the Pat McAfee show. Obviously, he didn't get hired this year. Yeah. He signed up to be on Inside the NFL last week. He's been very public. He did the roast. Yeah. He's really been showing a side of himself that we never saw or rarely saw while he was actually coaching in the league. And it really made me start to actually believe that maybe this was a guy that was starting to become comfortable with the idea of riding off into the sunset and never coaching another NFL game. And lo and behold, you start to believe that. And then Pelissaro's report drops today indicating that Belichick absolutely wants to coach in 2025. And we've talked about this before, but I think that a couple things about that I think are worth mentioning again and discussing. Number one is the story of this year for the New England Patriots. There's going to be two. One is going to be the development of Drake May if he sees the field, or even if he doesn't. And number two is going to be this juxtaposition between Belichick and Mayo, and the contrast between Belichick and Mayo.
Yep.
And as much as we feel that right now, wait until the losses start piling up in Foxborough. And I think even the most optimistic among us acknowledge the fact this might be a mediocre year at best. What's going to happen when they're 3-7? What's going to happen if they're 2-8, if they're 1-5? Belichick, Mayo contrast, the what if scenarios are just going to be a huge part of the narrative of the 2024 New England Patriots. And I will say this, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on this. To me, it almost makes it worse that Bill Belichick is not coaching anywhere this year, because it becomes a competition between Gerard Mayo and the memory of Bill Belichick. The bad last couple of years, they're going to fade off quickly, and people are just going to remember, I think, or focus on more the legend of Bill Belichick, the good times of Bill Belichick. And Mayo is going to really, I think, struggle with that hanging over his head this whole year as this team undoubtedly faces some adversity. It would almost be better, from my perspective, if Belichick was facing his own adversity coaching in Atlanta or Arizona or wherever the hell he was, and maybe facing some highs and lows himself. I think that would make things a little easier for Mayo. I think it's tougher that Belichick's on the sideline. He's not going to lose one game this year as a head coach. He's not going to face any adversity this year as a head coach, right? Mayo will.
I think I have mixed feelings about that, right? Because part of me looks at me and says that, hey, I'm ready to move on, and I think you are too, ready to move on and say that we're not dwelling on the last couple of seasons in Foxborough with Bill Belichick, right? I think we're both at the point where we can look back at the good times and be thankful for it, right? I'm not sour. I'm not bitter about it. But I really just think that, no matter what, Gerard Mayo was going to be in for just to a certain degree, right? This was completely it wasn't avoidable. There was no way in any scenario that you take over for Bill Belichick and you just completely escape the criticism and the hanging over your head type of situation. My thinking with Bill Belichick is I almost like the fact that he's not in the picture now, because now I think people are focusing on Bill Belichick, the personality, not Bill Belichick, the coach, right? We're seeing a side of Bill that we've never seen before. I think a lot of people are enjoying that side of Bill, and they're almost looking at it as a whoa, who is this guy? And where has he been for the last 20, 30 years? I wonder if Bill was in the league, if it could be worse for Gerard. And I think that would depend on his level of success, right? If Bill went to the Falcons or, someone that he had a chance to step in and do well with, and, he's having success, I think it's going to put even more pressure on Gerard and the Patriots, because people are going to be sitting there going, oh, wow, they let this guy go. We still had plenty of juice left in the tank. Clearly Bill Belichick didn't lose his touch, right? If he came and he coached and he dropped the ball and, they weren't that good, his team missed the playoffs, something, I don't know. Then I think it makes it a little bit easier. But I don't know. I think it's a tricky situation no matter how you dice it.
I mean, it is a tricky situation for Gerard Mayo. It really is. It is not an easy task to follow in the footsteps of arguably the most legendary coach that has ever coached the game. I think that the problem is that right now, Mayo is going to be going against the legend of Bill Belichick, which I think is going to be greater than what we've actually seen Bill Belichick is at this point. You said that it depends on what kind of success he had. And that is definitely true. But I'm looking at the Bill Belichick we've seen the last 4 years, and I'm like, if he brings those same methods and those same things to anywhere he ends up, he's going to have some struggles. I'm sorry, because I'm not sure it was really working here. It wasn't really working here. And I'm not sure it would really work anywhere, even if he did take over a team. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons with Kirk Cousins, we're not exactly talking the 85 Bears here, right? If Belichick ended up in Atlanta, I guarantee you there would have been some adversity, and there would have been some low points in that season. What happens when Kirk Cousins throws 3 interceptions? What happens when he blows a lead? What happens when he barfs on his shoes in a big Sunday night or Monday night game? Now, none of that happens, and Mail's going against the 6-time Super Bowl champion guy that is larger than life.
Yeah, I think the best thing that Gerard Mayo can do for himself, because I don't think anybody expects Gerard Mayo to go out there I don't think people expect the Patriots to be the Texans of last year. And I actually, personally, I haven't ruled that out. I think I'm a little higher in the Patriots than some people, but I don't think the average person expects.
Like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think Gerard Mayo necessarily expects to, or people expect Gerard Mayo to go out there and find immediate success. But it's the same kind of attitude that I had when we drafted Mac Jones, or now that we've drafted Drake May. I just want to see something that I can hang my hat on and say that there's potential here. We brought in the right guy. We can build on it. Things will get better, right? And I think that, they have a tough schedule. They're the underdogs in pretty much every single game. Or I think it is every game.
Every single game.
Every game in the schedule.
17.
Right. So the expectations have already been set really low. I think could actually be easier than people think for him to perform above expectations. And it's not going to take a hell of a whole lot.
Yeah, but I think you're right in that, outwardly people aren't expecting much from this team, but I still feel like deep down inside there's that residual where the Patriots thing, dynasty, we should be at the top of the league expectation. You have an entire generation of people that have only known football success that considered a 7-9 year a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, so the bar is just set so different here. And I feel like that is going to be part of the equation too. As much as people say, oh, I have low expectations, we have low expectations, the reality is this is still New England. They're still coming off this great run.
Yeah.
And people are still, I think, going to have a really hard time digesting things when the losses start to pile up. And the first thing they're going to point to is the Mayo Belichick change. It's going to be the first thing people look at when the losses pile up. And that voice is going to be, maybe we should have kept Belichick. Why did we rush to bring this guy in? That is going to be such a huge part of this year. Shifting gears a little bit, Justin, I want to get your thoughts on just the report itself. And first of all, will Bill Belichick coach in 2025? And do you think he should?
I think he will coach in 2025. And I say that because I feel like if Bill Belichick wants to coach, it's only a matter of time before some team takes a gamble. I mean, we were all, I think, a little shocked that he didn't land anywhere for the 2024 season. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that I think are in the hot seat this year, some on some good teams. And I would really be surprised if he still wanted to coach next year, if there wasn't a team that was willing to take a chance on him. So I think he is going to coach. As far as should he coach, you just said earlier, you think he's going to be the next coach of the Giants. I don't think he should be the coach of the Giants. I think if he's going to coach again, he should step into a team that's currently a contender. They have a beefed up roster. They're really, only a few pieces away from being a true legitimate contender. Somewhere like, who knows what happens with Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia? Who knows what happens in Buffalo? Who knows what happens in Dallas, right? Who knows what happens? And there's some places that could be really good landing spots for Bill Belichick.
Just so you know, Colin Cowherd came on his show today, and he listed 3 franchises that Belichick that he heard was looking at Belichick, and they were just exactly the 3 franchises you just listed. By the way, Philadelphia, Buffalo, and Dallas. So exactly. You nailed that.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So look, I look at that and I say, You're telling, like, if Bill Belichick had a chance to go to one of those teams next year, I think he should do it. But I don't think he should go try to rebuild the New York Giants. To me, that I think is a waste of his time and a waste of his legacy.
See, I struggle with this one a little bit, to be honest with you. First of all, let me answer the two questions I asked you. Do I think he should coach? I'm 100% clear. I don't think he should. It would be tremendous entertainment value, and I would probably get a lot of entertainment from it. I would enjoy watching it, but I have too much respect and admiration for what Belichick accomplished to say that I want to see him go tap dancing for Don Shula's win records in some other franchise at 74 years old. I don't want to see that. I don't think Belichick has anything left to prove. I think it's totally acceptable and appropriate for him to ride off in the sunset. So I don't think he should, but I think there's a good chance he will, because as you said, someone is going to take a chance on him one way or the other. And it's going to be, the question becomes, what in terms of, where does he want to end up? Does he want to end up in a franchise that, hey, take the keys to the Rolls Royce. We've got the quarterback. We've got a good defense. We've got a lot of players, come in and coach. Or does he want to build a program from scratch? And that's where I really struggle a little bit with what would be the right landing spot for Belichick, because if this was 10, 15 years ago, is there any doubt Belichick would want to go build a program somewhere? But because he's 73 years old, now it's like he wants to take over someone else's program and get them over the goal line. That was never what Bill Belichick was really about. Bill Belichick is about doing things the quote-unquote Patriot way, which is kind of sort of the Belichick way, his way of drafting players, his way of building a roster, his way of coaching, his way of finding talent. Is he going to want to take over someone else's, incomplete work and try and finish it? It's not really what Belichick, I would say, has ever really been about.
It's not. But one thing that Belichick has always been about, I think, is not only being competitive, but I think we've seen him be very petty to an extent, right? We've seen him be very petty, and we've seen him have a lot of hubris over the years, right? I think those two things have honestly been staples of his career, right? And look, it's a Patriots podcast. Let's throw Tom Brady's name in here. What did Tom Brady do when Tom Brady left the Patriots? He went to a contender, right? A lot of people didn't think Tampa Bay, at first, people probably scratching their heads. And then you looked, and that was a team that was literally a quarterback away from a Super Bowl run, right? So that's what Tom Brady did. Tom Brady left. He went to an organization that was ready to win. They just needed a franchise quarterback, and he stepped in and he won, right? Does that influence Belichick at all? The guy who's petty, the guy who's stubborn, the guy who wants to win, right? Maybe he looks at that and says, "Look, I'm not going to go try to reinvent the wheel and build something from the ground up. I'm going to do just what Brady did. Brady went and got a ring somewhere else that was ready to win. I'll step in somewhere else that's ready to win and get a ring." I wonder if that influences him even just a little bit.
I mean, I just can't see Belichick doing that personally. It's so hard. I feel like as much as it would make sense for him to do that, Justin, it would probably be the smart thing for him to do, to say, hey, I'm a terrific football coach still. Let me go to Philadelphia and get them over the hump. Let me go to Dallas and get them over the hump. That would probably be the logical thing for Bill Belichick to do. But I just feel like from what we've seen from him, I just can't see it. I still feel like even at 73 or 74 years old, whatever he'll be next year, I still believe that he will want to go somewhere and start a Bill Belichick program from the ground up. And that's why, one of the many reasons why I do consider the Giants a dark horse team to land his services next year, because I think the Giants are going to struggle this year. I think Dayball's time is up, and I think there's going to be a clean slate for him to go in there. And I think Belichick, at his heart, he's a football historian. He's sort of a football sentimentalist. And what better way to capstone his career than to finish it in New York, in New Jersey? You saw how sentimental he got when he went back to the Meadowlands in that Bill Parcells 30 for 30 thing, I mean, the feelings are strong there. But I think even if it's not the Giants, it's going to be a situation like that where I think he can build his own program.
Well, it's certainly the bigger risk, right? And I'm sure he knows that. I mean, look, at this point in his career, as much as I love Belichick and is in high regards as I hold him, there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, well, he never won without Tom Brady, right? I mean, he barely had above 500 records without Tom Brady. And after the last couple of years, those rumors, and not even rumors, those stories and those facts start to swirl around a bit more and a bit more in the media. If he goes somewhere else and he fails at rebuilding, he fails at drafting, he fails at coaching up a team and building up a program and changing the direction of a franchise, that's really risky for him. Like, then the doubters really, really have something to sink their teeth into. I don't know. Do you think he takes that risk? Someone who's out there chasing greatness?
Me, Justin, that's why I believe he should not coach again, because right now his legacy has taken really minor damage. He is still considered a legend. Look at the reception he got at Brady night. Yeah. He is going to be remembered on the Mount Rushmore of football. Why does he need to go back and coach to get more wins than Don Shula? I think it's totally irrelevant. He's got more rings than Don Shula. That to me is more valuable. He doesn't need to prove anything. Like, you're right. He takes a huge risk by going back at 74, a la Vince Lombardi with the Redskins like 50 years ago, right? Where that didn't end well. A la Joe Gibbs with the Redskins more like 20 years ago when he went back for that second stint and it was a disaster. It's a huge gamble to Belichick's legacy, and why he's better off, in my opinion, just riding off of the sunset and being the grand old man of football. All right, let's shift gears a little bit, sort of along the same lines, but I want to talk a little bit, Justin, about a Mike Reese report from the Sunday Globe this week about the Patriots' current coaching staff and see what your thoughts are on that. The report indicated that the Patriots now have gone from one of the smallest coaching staffs in the league to one of the biggest, okay? Now they have over 30 assistant coaches helping out Gerard Mayo in Foxborough. And I got to say, and I'm really curious to hear your take on this, my initial reaction to this information was not positive. Because, first of all, I feel like they're trying to make up for Mayo's lack of experience by just bringing in a ton of other people to try and contribute and help them find answers. And it just feels like a coaching staff that size, that many different voices, inexperienced head coach, I feel like it sounds like it's going to be very chaotic. I mean, maybe most coaching staffs are that size today. I don't know. We should look into that. But it just feels like, I feel like they're trying to compensate for Mayo's lack of experience with a huge coaching staff.
So, when you first said that, I think I was immediately dragged in two different directions, right? Kind of polar opposites. The first was similar to what you said, right? Is that their way of kind of saying that they need as much help as they can get to be where they need to be, right? But then I thought about it and I said, is the league just heading to a place where you want to have as many specialists on your roster like as possible? Like, could it be something where they're just trying to embrace this new age of football and saying, hey, we want a specialist for everything. We want somebody who can focus on this, somebody who can focus on that. Like, maybe part of his plan to rebuild the program is having enough people to give special focus and special dedication to the different areas, the different positions, different facets of the game. I don't know. But by the same token, it could be what you said. It could be the lack of trust and the lack of experience. I could see it being both.
I mean, part of me is like, well, maybe it's a good thing, because maybe it's acknowledging some of Mayo's limitations and trying to find solutions to work around them by bringing in a lot of voices that can kind of help them. I mean, I'm guessing there's a lot about getting ready for NFL game day that Gerard Mayo does not know about because he's never done it before. So maybe having all those voices can kind of help in that regard. I don't know.
I mean, look, I don't think having more coaches on the roster is a bad thing, but to your point, it could be indicative of something that's not great, right? So let's just hope that whether it's having more, let's just hope that no matter what, it has a net positive, outcome, right? Having more coaches in the roster is either going to do one or two things. It's either going to increase the amount of attention they're able to give to people, which is good, or it's going to compensate for where Mayo and maybe some of the other members of the staff lack, which is also good. So I'm hoping that either way, it has a net positive outcome, even if it may be because of, or maybe be brought upon by something that's not so great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on to another topic about just the general feeling. I want to change gears a little. The general feeling around this team right now, Justin, because we are now 7 days from training camp open up. I think rookies report this weekend, and then official opening is in a week. And I just feel like there's not a lot of like excitement about this year. And maybe that's justifiably so based on the team is. But do you get the feeling that there is any like buzz around this team right now or excitement?
Personally, I know myself, and I'm sure you and a lot of football fans in the area are excited to see what we have, because there's a lot of unknown variables, right? I kind of like the lack of hype, like the fact that, hey, these guys aren't being held to super high standards on day one, right? They're just going to be able to go out there and play football and kind of come into their own without too much added pressure on them. But I don't know, man. I'm pretty excited because we don't know so much. Like there's a lot of variables, a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, we've talked about, how this offensive line is going to come together. Is this defensive unit going to return and be another top 5, defense in the league this year? Is Drake, when does Drake May take over? Like how good does Drake May look? We have a bunch of young wide receivers. I mean, what's going to happen with these guys? It's not that I have super high expectations and a lot of hype, but I'm definitely excited to see how things shake out.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited too about the team and the fact that football season started. But I also feel like there's a part of me that is just very much resigned to the fact that this is going to be a rebuilding year. I think part of the problem and why I'm not like super excited about this is because I'm not sure when we're going to see Drake May. And if I felt like Drake May was going to play at the beginning of the season, I could accept a bad or losing team this year.
Yeah.
Because I would want to see what this guy develops and what he grows into. I've been through this before with Drew Bledsoe, a long time ago. That can be entertaining and exciting in its own way. The fact that it looks like it's going to be Jacoby Brissett for at least the beginning part of the year, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I understand why they're doing that. They probably have to do that. Fine. I get it. But it just definitely kind of detracts away from my excitement about the team. It feels like that's just going to be a holding pattern.
I mean, the way I look at this team is we're in a unique position, I think, both as an organization and as fans, where, I can't remember the last time we were projected to win or projected for tied with the least most wins in the NFL, right? Like we're in uncharted territories. We're in new water right now. I look at this and I say, hey, even if the rest of the league isn't excited, we're not getting quite the buzz, quite the hype. Drake May, to me, yes, that's the big focal point right now. But I look at this and I say, hey, I think regardless of whether Drake May or whether Jacoby Brissett is starting, I look at this team as a dark horse. And to me, that's exciting, right? When Drake May comes onto the field, I will be very excited to see him. But I'm still excited by this team as a whole, because I think outside of Drake May, there's other components to this team that I'm still really excited about, right? We didn't get to see much of Christian Gonzalez last year. We didn't get to see much of Christian Gonzalez. We're curious to see what happens with this offensive line, right?
Couple rookie wide receivers,
right? So I'm super stoked to see what happens with Drake May, and I think he's going to be pretty good. I think we'll see him sooner rather than later. But to me, there's enough holes that we're trying to fill heading into the season that there's plenty to me to get excited about and see how it shakes out, regardless of when Drake May starts.
Yeah. I think there's always some intrinsic excitement with football starting. So, look, we've had in New England, we've had more than our fair share of rewards, of great seasons. So like, I feel like rebuilding year or not rebuilding year, that look, I'm engaged. I personally am engaged.
Right.
I don't get the sense that maybe other people are quite to the extent that they were in the past, but I guess that's kind of predictable when you're coming off 4 mediocre seasons. You have a new coach and a rookie quarterback, and so it will be interesting to see how it goes. And above all things, Justin, I just hope that when we get to October, late October, early November, they're still alive. That's really what I want. You look at that early schedule and give me something to follow and be entertained and excited by, not just in August and July, but into October and November even. And I can live with the fact that it might not work out, but I want this to be a real season, a meaningful season. And I think that will do more for restoring that kind of interest and buzz than anything else.
Well, I agree. And look, I think I'm higher than most people in terms of the probability that actually happens. Like, I actually think that, hey, if this defense pans out, if Drake May is good, if these wide receivers round into form, right? Like if this O-line reaches its potential, there's no reason why this can't be a good team that can keep their playoff hopes alive, deeper into the season. Like, yes, the odds are stacked against them. Yes, a lot has to go right for that to happen. But I think I think if you're ruling that out from Jump Street, then I think you're mistaken, because I think we got to give these guys a chance. There's just too much unknown, and I think there's too much talent overall on the roster to just completely write them off.
Right, and that's a great segue into what I was going to bring up as the next topic. So let's move on to that. Let's shift gears a little. ESPN made its list of top 10 players at every position, and they polled scouts and GMs across the league, and they came up with a list. And there was only one Patriot that actually made top 10 across the league at any position, and that was Kyle Duggar at safety. And so I'm going to throw some names out at you, and I want you to see if you think they should be on that list of top 10, and we can talk about that. But before we even do that, I do want to say that one thing this exercise has made me realize is that this roster is a lot more talented than people give it credit for. It's just that there are glaring holes at 3 positions: quarterback, tackle, and wide receiver. And in today's NFL, those are the 3 most important positions on the field.
Right.
So if you can't score points, you can't throw the ball, it's really hard to win. You're at a huge disadvantage, and there's, you're very limited in what you can accomplish as a football team. But if you look across the roster at other spots, the cupboard is not as bare, certainly on the defense, as you might be led to believe by the fact that they were a 4-win team last year. So to me, it really comes down to filling those 3 holes, and or at least 2 of them. And I think that will go a long way towards, making them a really viable playoff team again. But I'm going to go through this list with you. And like I said, throw out some names of people that weren't on the list.
Okay.
And you can tell me what you think about them. Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, should Ramondre Stevenson have been on the list? Yes or no? Top 10 running back.
I'm going to say no. But teetering. I think he's in the early teens, but I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I concur. I say big fat no on him. Not a top 5 or 10 running back. Good running back, not a great one.
Right.
Hasn't done it. Can't stay healthy. I'm okay with him not being on the list. Next one I have a problem with. Michael Onwenu. What do you think? Should have been on the list, yes or no?
I think he probably should have, but I don't know if I'd call it like blatantly obvious. I think he makes a good argument for himself. Where would you rank him in the top 10?
I think he's a top 10 guard in the league. I think he's a top 10 guard in the league. He might not be a top 3 guard, but I think he's clearly in that 3 to 10 range if you look at his performance over the last few seasons. And he was certainly the highest in best available offensive lineman, arguably in the free agent class this year.
So, all right. So then, yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that saying he's a top 10 guard.
How about this one? I thought this one was surprising. Are you telling me David Andrews isn't one of the 10 best centers in the National Football League? That I think that's ridiculous.
I agree, and especially, the guy like Jason Kelce leaving, I think it's even a bigger argument. Like, I think it bumps him up another spot. Like, you're basically telling me that with Jason Kelce gone, even with Jason Kelce in the picture, that he wasn't even like 11. Like, I think that's crazy to me. Like, I think he's probably, I don't know, I would maybe in the 6, 7 range.
I agree 1,000%. I mean, how many centers make the Pro Bowl each year? Probably only one on each side, right? So, I mean, I feel like he's been a borderline Pro Bowler pretty much his entire career. So, yeah. I don't know. I didn't like that one. All right. How about Hunter Henry? Should he be on the list? Top 10 tight end?
It's funny when the first person that came to my mind, or one of the first people that came to my mind, when you said that they weren't on this list, was Hunter Henry. Because, I get it. The tight end position is pretty top heavy in the NFL, right? You get your big dogs, you get your Kelce, your Andrews, your Laporta, your what's his name down in your Kyle Pitts. But like, I feel like after like 5 or 6, there's a pretty steep drop off, and it's kind of tough to argue that Hunter Henry hasn't shown that he's a top 10 tight end. Like, he's been very consistent when he's gotten the opportunity with decent quarterback play. He's excelled. He's been our best receiver for the last 3 years. I mean, I 100% think you got to at least give him like 9 or 10.
You got votes. I'd call him a borderline top 10 tight end. And I guess this is one where I really don't have a problem with him being not on the list, but I think he's right on the cusp. I mean, I think if someone told me he was like 9 or 10, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
If someone told me he just missed, I'd be okay with that. I think that's right about where he is. As it was, he got votes, but he didn't make the top 10. Sounds like right warehouse. This next one, I have a major problem with. Christian Barmore. Christian Barmore was a stud last year. I mean, this guy's a rising star in the league. He's not one of the 10 best interior linemen in the league.
I think he is. I just think I think he's suffering from. It's almost like, when you go to vote for MVP, if the MVP is on a crappy team, it's kind of tough to vote him the MVP, right? It's like, I think he's getting overshadowed because the Patriots were not that good last year. You're saying
the Patriots dragged him down.
I think the Patriots are dragging him down in that vote. I think if you were to just strip him away and look at him as a pure interior lineman, I think you can easily make an argument that he cracks the top 10.
Okay, and then a couple of the names that came to mind, but I think you'd agree with me, probably aren't worthy of top 10, but I'm going to mention they're probably borderline-ish. Juwan Bentley, Jabril Peppers, and Christian Gonzalez. He hasn't done it yet, so he might be a top 10 guy by the end of this year. But I'm a skeptic on him, not because I don't think he's talented, but because you have to be able to stay on the field to be a good player. You can't be promissory greatness. At some point, you have to do it, and we can call his injury last year a fluke, but that's fine. But he needs to come out and do it this year and prove that he is what Patriots fans think he is. Nonetheless, at this point, I think you can't include him in the top 10 list of anything. But that could change this year.
It could definitely change this year. I mean, look, here's someone, I don't know if you got him queued up, but someone I think maybe to me the most obvious miss is Matthew Judon.
I was going to bring him up next because I was going to segue into the his contract situation. But yeah, go for it. What do you think?
No, I think Matthew Judon is 100% a top 10 defensive end. I think when he was healthy in 2022, he was an absolute stud. He proved it. I mean, I think he was up there. I think he was either tied or he was in the top 2 for sacks, I believe, in 2022, or top 3. He was right up there.
Yep.
The guy is an absolute force. And I know I've heard it. Coming into this year, the guy is on a mission. I have some clients. They went down to his place in Texas. They trained with him a couple times. He's doing the 2-a-days. And straight from the horse's mouth, the guy says to watch out for him because he's coming back this year with the vengeance. Like, I think that guy, if he stays healthy, is not only going to be a top 10 defensive end, but I think he's going to he's going to compete for Defensive Player of the Year. That's my early prediction.
I think Judon is absolutely a top 10 defensive end, Justin, but how do you put him on the list when he only played a few games last year?
I mean, look, is this purely speaking from 2023, or is this saying like, hey, right now, talent-wise?
I think it's more the latter, but I feel like, you know, when you didn't produce on the field the previous year, and by the way, you're 32 years old, I just feel like, I mean, if you're wondering why he's excluded, and I'm with you, by the way, on Judon, great player, absolutely should be in the top 10 at his position. But if I'm trying to just like argue the other side of this issue and say, this is why Matt Judon didn't make the list, that's what I would say. I mean, he's 32 and he played 3 games last year. And I would say a third thing too, which is he's fallen off the cliff. That he had 2 great years in 21 and 22. Both times by Thanksgiving, he fell off a cliff.
He did, and those were injury related too, right? We've seen him; he's had trouble staying healthy and staying on the field. But you know what? If he can get his body right, he's had plenty of time. You know, from what I hear, he's putting in the work. If he stays healthy this year, I think he's going to be an absolute force. And I think one of the reasons behind that too, especially, is because I think this is a Patriots team with a very good defense and a good front seven, and I think they can open up things for him.
Yeah, it's a good front seven, I think, and that will help him. So let's talk briefly, Justin. We're gonna preview the AFC and NFC West today, quickly. But before we even get to that, very quickly, we did not talk about Judon's contract status. I don't know if you have a take on Matt Judon's contract situation. Personally, I have a hard time resigning this guy right now based on the fact that he's injured last year. And they gave him the extension last year. He benefited financially, and he barely played. And he signed that deal. The Patriots took on that risk. It didn't work out for the organization. I really think Judon needs to just come in and play and prove he can do it again on the field. Would have zero problem with them trading him, or at this point, to be honest. If they could get a second-round pick or something, third-round pick for him, I think they might have to think about doing that personally, because I just feel like he's probably not going to affect their win-loss record very much this year. The defense was pretty good without him last year. You know, I don't know. He's 32 years old. He's probably not part of the long-term plan here. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what they do. But I'm not signing this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some trade rumors out there with the Lions, and actually, I would love to see him go play in Detroit. I think that'd be a great landing spot for him to go to. Look, I mean, I'm a little torn because I think, like, you know, if 32-year-old who's got injury history, like you said, he's probably not a dominant factor in the long-term plans. But, you know, to the point we just made, if he's healthy, he's going to be a top 10 player at the position, right? And you're probably your best defensive player overall. So, I mean, I am a little torn. The other thing is, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, he wanted to restructure his deal after he saw all these other guys getting paid, right? Like the Patriots really came out and signed a bunch of their guys this offseason. And I think after that, Judon probably looked at that and said, hey, I'm the most talented guy on this roster when I'm healthy. Why aren't I getting my money? And I think that had a little bit to do with it. I don't think it was a coincidence that it came.
It had everything to do with it. It had everything. You can't pay all these guys and then, you know, stump your nose at the guy that's been your best and most productive defensive player for 2 of the last 3 years and would have been last year were it not for injury. And I can totally understand Judon's perspective in asking for it, but you know, I mean, the only reason I'd say I could justify maybe signing him if I'm the Patriots is the fact that they have so much cap room that they didn't use. That's about it. If you're asking me from a business perspective or from, running the organization perspective, I'm not signing this guy when he had played 3 games last year. He's 32 coming off a big injury and you already paid him up front last year and you got burned by it. No way would I give him more money under those terms. But if I had $30 million in cap room and it's really not going to matter one way or the other, I don't know. That's about it. You know, then I do it. But is it right? Is it fair? Absolutely not. Would I let him walk if I didn't feel right about it if I was the Patriots? Absolutely. All right, Justin. Let's move on. We're going to preview quickly the AFC and NFC West here. We're going to do it in a little bit of a different format. What I want to do is I want to ask a question about each team, and we'll get your answer. And then we are going to, I guess, briefly say a little bit of our thoughts about the division, who we think is going to win the division.
All right, let's do it.
Does that work? So, all right, let's go. Let's start with the NFC West. So I want to start actually with the Arizona Cardinals. This is not in order of who I think is going to win the division, by the way, but I think it's a great question. We don't talk a ton about fantasy on this program. Maybe we should talk more about it. Where should Marvin Harrison go in fantasy drafts this year? That's the Arizona Cardinals question. I've seen him projected late first, second round in some boards.
Yeah, all right. In fantasy, there's obviously a lot of factors that go into it in fantasy, right? Is it a keeper league, right? Do you have the potential to hold on to the guy? Is it a dynasty startup? There's a lot of factors. For me, I think I'd be comfortable taking him in the beginning of the second. I don't know. I mean, if it was a keeper league, I'd reach on him in the first. But if it's just a strict 1 year redraft, a rental for 1 year, I think I take him in the second. I don't know if I could justify taking him over guys like Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Like, I know he's probably going to get to that point, but you can't bank on it right now, right out of the gate.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I was thinking more mid to late second round is where it's the ultimate swing for the fences pick.
Yeah.
Because he could be a huge reward upside kind of guy to your fantasy team if you take him in the second round. And it just makes me think back to, it wasn't that long ago where any rookie running back that got drafted into a good situation would be a first round or early second round pick in fantasy. You know, like a team with a decent offense or a good offense drafts a running back, and you know, CJ Spiller or something like that, but whatever. And he becomes automatically a top pick. It was unheard of that would happen with wide receivers a few years ago. Yeah. Now we're having those conversations about wide receivers. Like, when have we ever counted on wide receivers to come into the NFL and score like 12, 13, 14 touchdowns in their rookie year? But I think when you look at the situation in Arizona, there is that kind of potential there, because I think Kyler Murray is an explosive quarterback. I think he's healthy. You know, I think that's a good situation. And that could be a really like dynamic duo there with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. So it's a swing for the fences kind of pick.
It is. And, you know, it's, I mean, I know they're not the same receiver, but to me, it's a very similar situation. And I think it's the most hype a receiver has had coming out of college since Calvin Johnson, right? Like, and I look at it, it's pretty similar. You know, you got a guy going to a losing franchise, right near the bottom of the barrel. They have a good quarterback, and they just explode onto the scene, right? And I definitely think Marvin Harrison Jr. is capable of doing that. But I mean, look, I just think there's too many good receivers out there in the NFL. I know he's got a lot of hype. I know we expect big things out of him, but I don't think, even if he does hit, I don't think he's going to outperform one of the guys that we just mentioned, a Jefferson, a Chase, a Hill, a CeeDee Lamb. I don't think he's going to outperform them so much that it's worth taking the risk in drafting him ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the draft board, and we're going to move on in a second, if you look at the draft board, they're really, I think, more than any other year I can remember, there are more guys with question marks. I mean, I think this is one of the years where there really is no clearly defined upper class at any position in fantasy this year. Like, there are just so many question marks across the board. You know, you're going to be taking gambles pretty much everywhere in those first couple round picks. There's no sure things. I think there's very few sure things in fantasy this year.
I agree. Totally.
Oh, all right. Now let's move on to the 49ers. This is my question for the 49ers. I have two, actually, because I couldn't decide between them, so I come up with two ones. I think this whole Brandon Ayuk thing is really interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. Because for 2 years, we've all sat back and we've watched Brock Purdy's success, and we've said Brock Purdy is a product of the talent around him. So what happens, Justin, right, when Brandon Ayuk leaves and the talent around him becomes a little less excellent, right? We all agree maybe he's not a true number one. Ayuk's a great receiver. Who is the imposter, right? We all assume that Brock Purdy is the beneficiary of the people around him. What if Brandon Ayuk is actually someone that has actually been the beneficiary of having a good quarterback and good players elsewhere? I right now question this assumption of Ayuk as like a plug and play number one receiver. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying it's not a given. Let's not forget there have been some notable examples in this league of guys that we were very productive in one situation because they were surrounded by talent and they went off and signed big contracts elsewhere, and then they absolutely sucked.
Look,
the question is, who is the imposter? Is it Purdy? Is it Ayuk?
Well, I think there could be a third option where neither of them are imposters. But if you're asking me, out of those two, where I would put my money, I would say that I think Purdy could be the imposter. I actually like Brock Purdy, and hey,
you're a Purdy guy.
I'm a Purdy guy. Remember, I told you I saw him in that preseason game during his rookie year, and I said, keep your eye on this kid. I like Brock Purdy, but I think Brandon Ayuk is legit, and I think right now, it's tough. Look, Brock Purdy's had a great offensive line. He's got the best running back in the league. He's got one of the best tight ends in the league. He's got arguably the best set of receivers in the league. We're close to it. And he's got a brilliant offensive-minded head coach who really specializes in making the most for his quarterbacks. So I really don't think either of them are imposters. But if I had to pick one, I would say Purdy, because I do think Ayuk is that dude. And I think if he goes to a team and he gets the volume, I think he will perform like a true number one.
I mean, I guess my point is just that, I think we all, the narrative, anything you say about Brock Purdy being the beneficiary of being in San Francisco, wouldn't you also say that about Brandon Ayuk? Is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah, I think so. I think the argument definitely goes both ways, for sure. It's a lot easier for someone like Brandon Ayuk to operate when the defense has to worry about McCaffrey and Kittle and Debo. So yeah,
exactly. And maybe Purdy too. Right? Who knows the directionality of who's benefiting from what there? And at the end of the day, they all benefit from each other. I mean, that's how great teams. That's why they're so hard to defend great teams. When there's so many different ways they can beat you. All right, last question, and I know this one for both the Niners is going to strike close to home to you. Is the San Francisco 49ers championship window closing, or is it closed?
I'm going to say it's closed.
Wow.
Yeah, I think this team, I think they got to be a little broken. I do. I think how does it not in the back of your mind that, no matter what, that something it's just not going to work out for you guys. Like you're almost getting into like the Buffalo Bills type of territory. You got two in the last 4 years. You got 2 Super Bowl losses and a divisional championship loss. So I mean, that's tough. That weighs in the team.
Conference championship.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention the fact that all their studs are getting older, right? Debo, injury prone, another year older. Kittle, injury prone, another year older. Trent Williams, another year older. Christian McCaffrey, I know he was healthy last year, but the guy's been injury prone and he's another year older, right? They just lost, I believe, they lost one of their cornerbacks too, I believe, coming into this offseason. So, I mean, look, overall, I think San Francisco is going to be a good team. I think they're going to be tough, but I don't see them being, I don't think they win the NFC this year, and I definitely don't think they win the Super Bowl.
I'm going to go a little bit short of what you're saying. I definitely don't think the 49ers championship window is closed. But I think you could make an argument for a lot of reasons you illustrated that it's closing or narrowing. And I think that this might be their last year, legitimate year with this group of talent that they could win a Super Bowl, because I don't think Christian McCaffrey is going to play for much longer. As great and productive as he currently is, at some point it has to wear out. Deebo Samuel is one of the most frustrating players I've ever watched, because at one hand he is so powerfully impactful to every game he plays in. And on the other hand, he gets hurt all the time, and you can't trust and rely on him. And I think a lot of their core players are aging. So I don't think it's closed, but I do think it's closing. I still consider them a Super Bowl contender this year. And I think the biggest challenge that the 49ers are going to face in terms of crossing the hump, getting over the hump for winning a Super Bowl is going to be psychological right now. Because
I agree.
The whole Super Bowl loser thing, okay,
yeah.
I don't know. Is that still a thing? I think it kind of is. I mean, it was historically in the past. This is, it is going to be tremendously hard for them, I think, to go back to square one. Let's not forget what a gut-wrenching, excruciating, painful loss that was in the Super Bowl for the 49ers. That's as bad a beat in the history of this league.
It's funny you say that because earlier this morning, when I was working out, I was watching the Receiver documentary, and the last episode is exactly that. It was the Super Bowl, and it was just crazy to me, absolutely crazy to me. Looking back on that and just saying to myself, "Wow, this team was so close yet so far. They had so many opportunities." And they weren't able to get it done. They weren't able to get it done. And again, I think it wears on you year after year after year. It really was a great game. I remember watching that, and there were plenty of times you thought the Niners had that game in the bag. I mean, I was, like I said, when I was watching that episode earlier, you forget the fact that they had 2 chances on defense to stop them on 4th down, and the game was over, right? So, I mean, it really was just a game of inches at that point. And
how about Purdy? Purdy, really being inches away from throwing the game-winning touchdown pass, and the ball being deflected on the rush. Like little things like, I mean, they were so close to winning that game in so many ways. And I think it's hard for a team when they've lost 3 out of 4 seasons the way that team has lost. Like, at what point do they start to lose morale? And then that becomes a challenge for them to overcome. All right, let's talk a little about probably the most boring team in the division, which is the Seahawks. My question on the Seattle Seahawks, Justin, is the Seattle team basically in full rebuild mode? And is this Geno Smith's last year as a starter for the Seahawks?
I think Geno Smith had his flash in the pan year. I think he came back down to earth a little bit. I mean, they got they got some talent on that roster, right? I mean, DK, Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Kenneth Walker, like they got some good players on the defensive side of the ball too. I think if they were going to rebuild, I don't think it's a bad time to do it because I think they have a bunch of good pieces to rebuild around. But no, I don't think they're a contender this year. I think I think it probably is Geno's last year. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did they take someone in the draft, even if it was later, the Seahawks, or did they sign somebody?
I think they might have in the middle rounds. I'd have to look that up, but they don't have a quarterback of the future, and clearly, there are some pieces in place. I mean, I love their first round pick. They got the best defensive player, arguably, in the draft with the 16th pick in the draft. I mean, you kind of can't argue with that, but it just feels like, really, if you look at this sort of renaissance Geno Smith has had, it really started to taper off in the first year. He did not end that first season well at all, coming down the stretch in Seattle. And then last year, I think, was largely a disappointment. I think this is going to be it for him. I really do. I think you're going to see them moving on from him this year and really going into kind of a full rebuild.
Yeah, I don't think that would surprise me at all. And look, they got a new coach. They have some talent. They had a new coach. They got some talent to work around. They're definitely not a super contender this year. I think it's a good spot for them to course correct and start the rebuild before things potentially get worse.
And they are coming here, I think, in week 2 or 3.
Week 2, yeah.
Week 2. Home opener?
Our home opener, yes, yeah.
Yeah, whenever it is, yeah. So, I mean, that's going to be a very winnable game for the Pats for sure. All right, last but not least, the LA Rams, they are a closet Super Bowl contender. Agree or disagree?
I'm going to say agree just because, you know, what you saw out of that team last year. Stafford's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. McVay is Super Bowl winning coach. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. You know, the emergence of a guy like Puka Nacua. And, you know, I don't think that's a super, super talented roster on paper, but that team finds a way to come together and play well. If they can stay healthy down the stretch, I think they got just as chance as anybody to go on a run.
Okay. I agree with that 100%. I like this Rams team. I think they're going to make some noise in the NFC. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the conference throughout the season, as long as Matt Stafford and their weapons stay healthy. I think they've rebuilt very quietly through the draft. They made a couple key free agent signings on the defense. I feel like, you know, the Donald thing is a blow. It's a setback, but I think they brought in a younger defensive lineman, the name escapes right now, to replace him. And, you know, overall, I mean, this is a passing game. This is a passing league. And the Rams can pass the football. They have the weapons. They have the quarterback. If Matt Stafford stays healthy, the Rams, I think, will be one of the best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
All right, so should we do the AFC West, Justin, or should we save that for another time? What do you think? It took us like 16 minutes to do the NFC West. I think we should save. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, it's up to you.
We got a long summer, dude.
We do.
Long summer.
Plenty of time.
All right, so we'll do one division per episode, I think, moving forward. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is the always exciting non-football topic of the week. Justin, this week, the question is, what is the most overrated holiday?
What is the most overrated holiday? You know, that's how far down the totem pole are we going here? Like, are we just keeping it to, okay, as far as I want? All right. The most overrated holiday, I think, is New Year's Eve. To me, New Year's Eve is just like, everything is super expensive. Everything is super crowded. You usually, you know, freezing your butt off. I can't remember, you know, it's not something that I ever want to be, you know, actively trying to participate in. I'll stay at my house. I'll go to a buddy's house, but, you know, I'm not going to a bar. I'm not going out. I'm not going to Times Square. I'm not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like the low hanging fruit. New Year's Eve sucks.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, personally, I really don't even consider New Year's Eve a holiday. It may be a legal holiday, but to me, it is just completely another day. Couldn't care less about it. Don't want to celebrate it. Don't want to acknowledge it. It is the best night of the year to stay home, in my opinion. So I don't even like, when you ask me what is the most overrated holiday, New Year's Eve doesn't even register for me because I don't even consider that a real holiday, believe it or not.
All right.
I really wanted to make an argument that Thanksgiving was the most overrated holiday. I really wanted to try and do that. And that was almost just because, I don't know, I just felt like it was such a contrarian thing to say that I kind of wanted to do it. But I'm having a hard time even convincing myself that it is so. But I will say, in a culture, a civilization based on overconsumption, and we have like a massive problem with like weight and overeating and obesity and all this stuff. Do we really need a holiday that basically is epitomized by people just eating as much as they can? If we really wanted to give thanks, should we not like have everyone go exercise for a day or, you know, go for a walk? That's all I'm saying about that.
Well, you know, all right. I see where I thought you were kind of going with this is the fact that, like, I think if we're talking about like the meaning behind it or what we're actually celebrating, I think it's one of the less impactful ones, right? Like, you know, you talk about like Christmas, there's a lot of, you know, Christmas, Hanukkah, you know, Ramadan, all the ones that have religious implications, right? You know, you got July 4th, it's celebrating America's independence, but like Halloween and Thanksgiving, there's really no good meaning behind it, right? You know what I mean? It's more just like an excuse to get together and indulge, right? And look, I'm not going to complain. I'll take the food. I'll take the football. I'll take the family. It's always a great day. But
I have to finish my thought though, because like I can't say Thanksgiving is overrated. Is just my bottom line.
Right.
But I'll go with one you just mentioned. Halloween, far and away the most overrated holiday. Halloween sucks. Halloween is become a caricature of itself. There was a brief window there for like a decade where it was kind of funny and cool, and grown up started dressing up, and it was like haha funny, and then it just like jumped the shark. It just like went too far, and now it's become a thing, and now like I kind of secretly hate it. Even though I dress up every year, I do that. I think more. I want to say more for my kids, right? And we have fun with it, but it's for kids, Halloween, and it is not for grown-ups. And something about the whole grown-ups and Halloween thing has just really started to like burn my ass the last few years.
Look, I get it. I mean, it definitely is one of those holidays that I feel like you do for the kids, and you enjoyed it more when you were younger. 100%. It's not something that carries the same weight, as an adult. Some holidays, they get better as you get older. Halloween is just one that by the time you're an adult and you're out of like your early 20s, there's really nothing to it.
Yeah. All right, quickly. How about the most underrated holiday? I'm going to give you mine, and then because I feel very strongly that this is a super underrated holiday, and I take great personal offense to any institution that doesn't acknowledge it, and I don't want to get in trouble politically correct, so I'm going to call it by both its names, which is Indigenous People Day or Columbus Day. Whatever name you choose to call it, okay, that second Monday in October is a super underrated holiday. The weather is good, usually. It's still really nice around here. All kinds of great fall activities to do. There's football on that night. So you have live Monday Night Football, usually a good game, week 6, week 5, something like that. So you got that going for you. Go do something, go apple picking in the day, something in the day, whatever. You can go to the beach sometimes, it's still warm, come home, watch football. And then the best part about Columbus Day, Justin, there is absolutely no expectation or tradition of anyone. There is no gift giving. There is no stress. There is no thing you have to do. You don't have to call your grandmother. You don't have to send anyone anything. You don't have to even prepare anything. Businesses are open. You want to order Chinese food or pizza or whatever the hell you want. It's all nothing's. I think Columbus Day is a great holiday that does not get the recognition it deserves.
I'll take that. Look, mine, I think, obviously this specific holiday, I think, everyone knows it carries a lot of weight in terms of its importance and significance and in what the meaning behind it is. But I'm going to go with Memorial Day. And I think it's underrated because to me, it creeps up on me every year, right? It's nothing that like I typically like mark on my calendar or really kind of expect, right? It's almost like it sneaks up on you at the end of spring, beginning of summer. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's Memorial Day weekend. It's a long weekend. And that to me is always like the official kickoff of summer, So I'm going to go with Memorial Weekend as my underrated holiday.
Yeah, that's a fair pick. I do think that Memorial Day weekend is one thing. I feel like always on Memorial Day, there's this very solemn energy, like a very somber kind of energy. And I think rightfully so, because it is a day of remembrance for those that give their life in honor of our country. The one thing I'll say about Memorial Day is the weather is still so freaking volatile around here. You don't know what you're going to get. Even with global warming, it might be warmer, but we still get so much rain in the spring. And we've had Memorial Days where the weather is gorgeous. And then we've had Memorial Days where it has been absolutely god awful.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you right now, and I'm trying to get you over to my side of thinking on this. Okay, you tell me if I'm wrong. Give me the weather on Columbus Day over the weather on Memorial Day. I think it is a safer bet you're going to get good weather on Columbus Day than you are on Memorial Day.
Well, you know what? The reason I'll agree with you there is because I think it's still at that point in the fall where you get that nice fall weather. The leaves are starting to change. It's nice. It's hoodie and jeans weather. You're not bundled up freezing yet. But Memorial Day is kind of the opposite, where it's like you just want it to be hot. You want it to be hot and sunny. You want it to be summer. And to your point, so many times you get stuck with that 50 degrees and rainy, 60 degree and rainy Memorial Day.
How many times in your life has it been like 90 degrees on like May 7th. Right. And you get like a heat wave on May 7th. And then like 3 weeks later, Memorial Day weekend, it's like 45 and raw and rainy. And you're like, what the hell why do I live here?
Plenty of it. Yeah, for sure.
Right. It is just infuriating. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. I think we'll wrap it up, Justin. This was a great conversation on holidays. You have to admit, that was a pretty good topic for the non-football topic of the week.
That was. Hey, we gotta, especially too. I at first I thought you were maybe going with July 4th, but then I thought to myself, I said, no, there's no way we're gonna say America's Independence Day is the most overrated holiday. But
I love July 4th. I will say the way our Julys have become around here, it's less enjoyable because again, the same thing. It friggin' rains like all the time, and it's so hot and muggy now in July here. It's like being in Florida. I feel like it's detracted a little from the July 4th enjoyment, but July 4th is a terrific holiday. I still can't really say a bad word about July 4th. And don't you dare go saying a bad word about Christmas, because I'm all about Christmas. I love Christmas.
Absolutely.
All about Christmas.
Christmas will always be the number one. That's always my number one. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you know who doesn't like Christmas? I not to be judgmental, but I'm going to throw this out. You know who doesn't like Christmas? Lazy people. Lazy people don't like Christmas because they don't want to work. They don't want to buy anyone gifts. They don't want to do anything. Yeah. They don't want to have to put effort in anything. If you put a little effort, Christmas will give back to you what you give to Christmas. Buy a few gifts. Think about it a little. Put a little thought into it. Stop thinking in September, October what you're going to buy. Don't wait until December 23rd to go buy all your crap. Then, of course, you're going to be miserable.
Exactly. And you know what? I think as an adult, too, I can't think of a more nostalgic holiday than Christmas, because I think what holiday impacts you more as a little kid than the one where Santa Claus comes and gives you a bunch of presents, right? Like, I think Absolutely. To me, Christmas will always be number one. So there you go.
I couldn't agree more. But I would go Christmas one, and probably Thanksgiving, or maybe July 4th too, and then Thanksgiving, and then from there, I think it's up to debate. It's all. I'd have to sit down and think about it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, brother. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. I want to say thank you to everyone that listened to this week's edition of the Dr. Football Podcast. We will be back recording in the next week or so. We will get into the time pretty soon. We'll be recording regular weekly episodes. We'll probably do that once the games actually start, because that will help us with the content. But certainly now with training camp, I think you can count on us recording sometime around next week to kind of preview training camp. And we'll do division by division through the summer. Next time we will do the AFC West. We'll take a look at this roster. There's still a lot of topics actually that I was thinking we might get to today that we didn't even get to. So that's a good thing. But we'll get through all of it, and we'll catch you all next episode.